I guess we should start. All right, this is a notice of a public hearing. The Board of Aldermen Ordinance Subcommittee has certain ordinances that are before it that we're asking for public comment and feedback on. These were posted on the city website. It is Tuesday, March 11th, 2025 at 6:45, and we're starting this public hearing via Zoom. So we are soliciting comment on attachment 1 and attachment 2, both of which are entitled storefront vacancy. So I'm going to open it up for public comment. Either raise your virtual hand or simply chime in, and we will try to hear from you and get public comment about these. John, I don't know if you want to give a little background on these, being the person that put most of these together, just give a little brief overview.
Of course.
Thank you.
So the last time we had seen this particular draft ordinance, there were some elements that were under consideration. And the ordinance committee, headed up by Alderman Yalman, did review the ordinance sense and made some proposed revisions. Those revisions have now been made. And so you can actually see the language of the current draft among the attached documents with the agenda, but also you can see the red line. So you can see what has been added, what has been subtracted. First to note, this is not necessarily a fine on vacant buildings. This is a registration program that requires owners maintaining vacancies to register with the city on an annual basis to ensure that they are accountable for the condition of their property. And this is, of course, in response to a very well-known challenge that we've been facing, identifying these parcels as they change from time to time and making sure owners are taking the correct steps to ensure the safety of the parcel and the surrounding area. So there is a registration fee. However, it is not a very cumbersome fee. It doesn't increase from $500 the first year to years following, right? Keeping up basically with the idea that the longer it remains vacant, the more issues there are. And there is, of course, a fine for not registering, but that is, in fact, the only fine there is, the failure to register to get it onto the rolls. One big point of consideration that the subcommittee looked at was previously this pertained to both commercial vacancies and residential vacancies. The residential vacancy portion has been removed. So the current draft pertains to commercial only. That's the intention. So we can zero in on the vacant storefronts and commercial properties. Secondly, what has been added is a section on waiver. So there's a process to ask for a waiver of the fee on the basis of several claims that could be made. Of course, financial difficulty is one. The other claim that basically there is a process in place to get the vacancy fulfilled. And there's a new one added for the display of art, so that if the owner of a commercial vacancy were to propose improvements such as the display of public art in order to decrease the visual stigma associated with such vacancies, that could be considered by the building department and the Board of Aldermen in terms of a waiver for those for that registration fee. This is still very much, of course, a work in progress. The Board of Aldermen tonight does not have any plans to actually act on this ordinance. I want to say that right up front. This hearing is for the purpose of hearing for the public, different ideas, and for the Aldermen and the Aldermanic Subcommittee, headed up by Alderman Yalman, to make future revisions. So there's not an intention to vote on this tonight. I will also say that there has been some talk about incentives, right? There's certainly holding the owners as accountable, but what of incentives to give some relief to owners to help them? And I will, of course, remind everyone that the city has always been willing to tackle incentives to fill vacancies, whether it be tax incentives, whether it be programs, grant programs to beautify storefronts. And I could also tell you that what I would say is, the most noticeable vacancies that we've been challenged with, especially the Big Y Plaza, there have been frequent, regular talks about the potential for incentivization, right? So the idea that it's only a one-way street, that's not true at all. There is, of course, the ability to give incentives and the desire and the willingness to consider that when warranted, when in the best interest of the city, but also on the other end, we're trying to make sure that there's also some accountability. We've also heard that the state might want to look at helping, and of course, all we can say is yes. More help, the better. This isn't just an Ansonia problem, but certainly is a problem as we see Connecticut's economy in particular become more and more challenging. And with that, I turn it back over to you, Alderman Yauman.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the summary and the comments. So we'll just open it up. Anybody from the public wish to make comments, speak, just raise your virtual hand or unmute yourself and chime in, state your name and your address for the public record, please. And I will just add that we're looking for comments on this ordinance only. Obviously, we're restricted in the public hearing to that. So I see Mr. Phipps, my friend. Go ahead.
Bill, you're muted.
Yeah, Bill, you got to unmute yourself. There you go, Bill. Oh, still can't hear you.
Maybe his own microphone is for the volume's all the way down.
Yeah, everyone is allowed to unmute themselves, so there's no restriction on unmuting here.
But it's muted.
How about now?
There you go.
I can hear you now, Bill. Yep.
Oh, these newfangled computers. Listen, I noticed on the proposed ordinance, the definition of vacant property. In that definition is a reference to residential. Now, is that something that just got missed when it was typed? As John just said that residential is not.
It may have been missed in the red lines, Bill. Thank you for pointing that out. Do you know where that is in the document itself, under definitions?
Well, definitions of vacant property.
Yeah, the
Any
residential
building
should be removed. So if a remaining reference is there, it's still, it would be removed. The residential is not the aim of the ordinance.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that was one question. A vacant property on, okay, yeah. Between the auto repair business that used to be a gas station, next to Valley Motorsports. And that would be one that would be targeted for registration because it looks like it's abandoned. And there's another one that I'm trying to apply this ordinance down on Main Street next to the Road Ready, where they're reconfiguring that gas station now. And next door is it's either a 3 or 4 unit taxpayer that looks like it was starting to be rehabbed, but it's dead in the water for a couple of years. Would that be one that would want to be eyeballed? One across from the liquor store there. And the vacant lot, there's another one that, would that be included? Next door to Legacy, across from the post office? Now that's been vacant for a number of years.
The overarching goal is to vacant storefronts, so vacant commercial properties, that are intended to be used for commercial properties, or that's their use. That's what this registration would be for.
Okay, you're targeting properties with something on them and not an empty piece of property. Otherwise, if that got in trouble, it would be a blight situation, and that would be it. Okay, those are the only questions I had, and of course, my own personal opinion is I felt very uncomfortable with it, and only the fact that here you got a business that, for whatever reason, had to close or was forced to close, and now it's going to cost them, after a couple of years, $3,000 a year to register it. And I said, whoa. But the other side of the coin is, why would they want it vacant? If they can get some help, we can give it to them. That's the object of the game, I would assume, but sometimes you got to ask yourself the question too. So I just don't want to have it turn into a big expense that'll get no result. Because if somebody wants to get their business up and running or their building filled, how is this going to incentivize them? It's not, obviously, but the goal is to fill it up. And that's about it. We've got some big nuts in town, I know. And
Thank you, Bill.
okay,
Appreciate the comment.
thank you.
Is there anybody else? Raise your virtual hand or unmute yourself and just chime in, state your name for the public record.
I'm hearing some sound, but I
Yeah,
can't
I hear-
exactly see where it's coming from.
Looks like D. Dalton is raising his hand.
Hi, yes, my name is Dana Dalton. I'm a resident of 26 Byron Avenue. I just have a couple things just for everyone to think about. It was mentioned that the city would be interested in incentivizing either the property owners. I was just curious, is that in regards to the building owner itself or the personal property owner that would be utilizing that tenant space?
So typically incentivization is for the owner, and there's some ability to work with a tenant, but generally it starts with a talk about the owner.
Okay. All right, yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. Maybe adding that in somewhere in the language. Taking a quick view at it, that was something that I kind of stumbled over, not knowing if it would be for the building owner or the personal property owner, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and this does tend to come up. I mean, a lot of the times what happens is, especially with the larger commercial properties, the owner will pass on the taxes and utilities to the tenant. So relief that's offered to the owner could certainly be passed down to the tenant. So the tenant will certainly be affected by incentives given to the owner. Of course, the question is always balance, right? Because you never want to incentivize more than is necessary. And it's always been, the aim of the board in the city to try to understand, what is the right time and the right level to incentivize. Right now we do have some projects going on in the city that likely would never have been done, or at least not done at this point, if it wasn't for a level of incentivization. ATP Palmer is one great example, and the adjacent 501 Main Street that is preparing to go forward later next month. So, there's always a discussion, incentives get talked a lot, although honestly, there's probably a small handful that have actually obtained incentives from the city. But yeah, primarily owner, but there always is an ability to talk about what could be done with personal property taxes. I think that was done only once with better packages.
Thank you, John. Does anybody else from the public wish to comment on the proposed ordinance? The second time going, anybody else from the public wish to make public comments about the proposed storefront vacancy ordinance? I don't see any virtual hands. Going a third time. Anybody from the public wish to make comment during the public hearing on the proposed storefront vacancy ordinance? Okay, seeing none and hearing nobody chime in, I will close the public hearing. I will turn it over to you, Josh. I don't know if you want to take a minute. I think we're just before 7, so.
Keep going.
Now I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the full Ansonia Board of Aldermen meeting for March 11th. We have a special guest supposed to be here to do the pledge for us. I'm looking for that person. Not seeing it. Dr. Joe is here. Maya Maldonado, is she here?
I saw that name
It's
a minute
just
ago.
here.
That
Josh.
name before.
I saw it. Wonder if she
Oh, yeah.
logged
Nope,
out.
she's here. Amaya Maldonado,
Okay.
we're ready for you to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Welcome. Please rise for the pledge. Get it. Okay, we're ready.
I pledge of allegiance
To
the flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic
for
which it stands,
One nation.
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
Great
justice for
job.
all.
I wanted to
Great
mention,
job.
Maya is from Prendergast. What grade are you in?
5th grade.
5th grade. Thank you. And
Well
once
done,
again,
Amaya.
once
Thank
again,
you, Maya.
Ansonia
Good
Public
job.
Schools is way better than we are, so we appreciate you coming this month. Thank you. All right, we'll go for a roll call, Trish.
Alderman
Thank you.
King,
Welcome.
Alderman King,
Here.
Alderman Farrar,
Here.
Alderman Adamowski,
Here.
Alderwoman Tar,
Here.
Alderman Cassetti,
Here.
Alderman Janetti,
Here.
Alderman Nutt,
Here.
Alderman Hardy,
Here.
Alderman Yauman,
Here.
Alderman Rivers,
Here.
Alderman Mamone, President Stewart,
Here, and so is he.
Alderman Levinsky,
Here.
Alderman Durante.
Here.
14 present, 0 absent.
Great.
Wow.
We have, not only have a quorum, we get a sticker for perfect attendance. All right, so before we start, I want to add one item to executive session. If we can get a motion to add the 50 Woodbridge Avenue appeal to.
Motion
Second,
to add it to the agenda for executive.
and the second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Tar to add that to executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll take that up as number 3 in executive session. Minutes, you got the minutes in the packet from February 11th, 2025 full board meeting. Seeking approval of that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Yaman, second by Rivers. Any addendums or issues? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? All right, motion carries unanimously. Now we'll open up the public session. Any resident is welcome to speak. Just a few quick rules, as always. Please identify yourself for the public record. And please try to limit yourself to 3 minutes or less if possible. And I'm seeking anyone that wants to address the board tonight. Bill, you want to speak, or is that hand up from before?
No, I'd like to speak, Josh. Thank you.
Yep.
I referenced the agenda tonight, and I had a couple of questions off it. And it was the new business number 1 on the agenda. There was a sticky note on the signage that's down the Public Works Department. And it says brush removal charge. And that was confusing. I don't know if it's brush, who's removing the brush? So I didn't quite understand what the attempt was there.
Fee for brush removal.
Yeah.
We're just gonna discuss that later under new business. The
Yeah,
current
well-
fee. What you're saying? What's down there currently on the signage?
Yeah, on the signage, well, it's there on the agenda, $10 for pickup truck and so forth and so on. But it says brush removal. I think there's a verb that's out of whack there. Maybe brush disposal
Yeah,
instead
maybe
of
you're right.
removal. If you're going to whack people that are bringing it in.
Yeah. Okay.
That was all. It's
I have no idea where that's gonna go. I do know we'll talk about the
Yeah.
fee later on. I think that was the impetus was the brush.
Yeah.
Good
I-
point, though.
If I recall, when Mickey was running the place, he took great pride in resurrecting from the scrapyard a big brush crushing machine. I presume that's kaput now because I noticed that we've got to find 15 grand to get rid of our big brush pile. So just an aside. And the only other thing I have is in your executive session, you have a line to talk about leasing parking spaces in the lot over there. And quite honestly, I think at this point in our rebirth, it's a bad idea to relinquish any access to those parking spaces because I believe that they're going to become valuable. I know there was a parking report that Dave Eller was making. I don't know if it was ever finished, but that's one thing. And just today, it looked like that lot was 40% full. I drove by it at 3:00 and I said, "Wow, a lot of people using it." And I don't want to presume what precipitated that item, but I can guess. But I know when the fellow was talking about doing the Sentinel building, making it a brewery and a restaurant and so forth, and his very quick answer was, "Oh, the parking is over across the street in the lot," and I think that's in our regulations to consider the lot as a parking requirement within 200 or 300 feet of the application. So, where things are happening on Main Street, we don't want to wake up one day and find out that people are double parked. And it's just something that we've got to be super alert on. And don't go, once you sign a lease, now you're wind up sucking wind. So that was my only comment.
Thank you.
And thank you for the listening.
Yeah, no, thank you. Good points.
Yeah.
Bart Flaherty. Bart, are you still interested in speaking?
Good evening, Mr. President, and members of the Board of Aldermen. I just have a question in the, Mr. Miller said that we need a referendum and possibly 4 referendums, and I was just wondering what that's all about.
I think any of that stuff is way premature at this point. Certainly the budget, is not finalized or anywhere near that. But I could defer to the city staff if they want to address that. I don't know if Kurt is here. I'm looking. There's a couple pages.
In the verbiage, it said you'd need the first one on April 17th, and I didn't know the budget was this far along. That's all. I was surprised.
Is that in the boat meeting?
Pardon me? I
In
thought
the
it
boat
got
meeting?
off the Board of Aldermen meeting in his comments.
Okay.
Not in the minutes, but in his report, I believe it was.
Okay.
I could
That
chime
was
in.
my only question.
If
Okay,
you'd like,
thank you,
Mr.
Bart.
President, just to
John?
remove. So this has never come up before, so I think it probably is wise to chime in. Some years back, 13 years back, the Board of Aldermen, at the time, I was a member of the Board of Aldermen and worked with them to propose a revision to the charter. And the revision requires a referendum if the budget results in an increase of net taxes to be collected in the amount of 3% or more. Okay. So this could be as a result of expenditures, but it could also be the result of, for example, the revenue the city expects to get from the state. And so for factors along those lines, it appears that this year it is possible that for the first time, the budget may result and an increase of net taxes to be collected in an amount of 3% or more. Again, there's no final numbers. Bo and the Board of Aldermen will be continuing to work on the budget. However, if this does trigger the referendum for the first time in Ansonia's history on the budget, there would need to be enough time to get it to referendum in case it were to fail in the first round. So we're looking at a schedule that would mirror what a town like Seymour would do in terms of getting it out there in mid-April. That way there is an ability, if the residents reject the budget, to make revisions and send it back out. Again, we've never done this, but I can tell you that according to the charter provisions that the board passed 13 years ago, the referendum would be done in a manner similar, again, to towns that have the system, a town system such as Seymour. The city budget and the Board of Ed portion of the budget would be up for vote separately. And there'd be an ability for residents to indicate not only yes or no on both budgets, relative to the expenditures of both increase of both departments, but also to say too high or too low to give an indication of what's on their mind. I'm sure we'll be talking more about this in some detail. However, as President Schuer says, it is a little premature as we do not have a firm indication as to whether this is the case, but it's something that we should have in mind if a citywide referendum is necessary, potentially even more than one.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the explanation, John. I really appreciate it. And
No
thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify for everyone that that was said, and that was in the municipal report that came out of the boat meeting. So thank you. Thanks for visiting.
Okay.
Next speaker, Amy Bravo.
Hi, Amy Bravo, 10 Clifford Drive. I just wanted to make a comment that I think it's very exciting that the city is moving forward with the Nolan Field project. And it's going to be so great for the athletes and the kids of Ansonia. And I think it's a perfect time that we all in the city decide to show people that we're really serious about giving the kids of Ansonia what they deserve. A lot of time and attention is being spent on the Nolan Field project, which is excellent. But I do want to just note that it's equally important that the city puts on its radar and on the radar of Public Works that there are also other fields not associated with the Nolan Field project that need to be up to par and ready to go in a timely manner for spring sports. In particular, I'm referencing things like the Ansonia High School softball field that needs to be ready to go by next Saturday when their spring season starts. It's my understanding that Public Works does upkeep that field at the high school. If I'm wrong, please correct me on that. There are other fields at Nolan that still need to be tended to, such as the skin field closest to the road near the tennis courts that gets used by the middle school baseball team, as well as the main diamond that needs to be cleaned up and raked so that it can be used right up until the time that ground is broken on the main field project. I know that hopefully will be soon, but up until that actually happens, there shouldn't, in my opinion, be any reason why the baseball team doesn't have access to that field. I was up there the other day and just walking across to center field, I picked up broken glass batteries, hand warmers, things like that. The field has trash on it, in addition to just needing to be raked and cleaned because it hasn't been touched since last season. Those are just 3 fields that need to be ready to go, that are still under the provision of the city and Public Works until, by next Saturday when their seasons start. And then in addition to that, you have Nelligan Field, you have the Little League field at Nolan that need to be ready by April 1st when Little League opens up their season, and not to mention any of the fields that are needed for spring soccer. It's a lot, and I just want to make sure it's on the radar that these things have to happen soon and quickly because it is a lot to do, and I just want to make sure someone is paying attention to the weather and taking advantage of the good weather that we've had to make sure that all of these fields are ready to go for our athletes that play in the spring. Thank you.
You. Appreciate it. Anyone else from the public who wishes to address the board tonight? Oh, Ellen? You're on mute.
Hi, I apologize for being late. Sorry, I just got home from being away all day. I just want to greet all the alders and say what an honor it is to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And you're at 153 Main Street.
Yes,
Perfect.
I live in Bella Vista Apartments.
Thank you. Thanks for visiting. Anyone else from the public who wishes to speak tonight?
Yes, I would. My name is Dana Dalton. I'm from 26 Byron Avenue. I just wanted to say a couple things in regards to, first of all, Amy, I think you were spot on about supporting the children within Ansonia. But another thing I think the city should really be focusing on, in addition to sports, is the actual school ratings. I have no experience like on the Board of Education, and my son is actually too young to be in grade school yet, but seeing the ratings of the Ansonia school systems, how we're really in the top 5 of the worst of the state, is just very concerning. We have incredible athletes, and I know we have a ton of really, really bright children, but if there's something maybe we can look into in regards to somehow raising, our test scores, or offering maybe some more after school programs or before school programs, anything to get these kids the education they really need, because being great at sports is one thing, but if you aren't athletic, that there's the children should be able to lean on other things other than just sports. So that's something to think about. And then also talking about the parks, I just yesterday actually tried taking my 3-year-old son to Lynette Park, and it is in complete shambles. It's just really embarrassing, but we have plenty, we have other nice parks, which is a nice option, but Lynette happens to be one of the closer ones to my house, and it's just a little feedback I wanted to give. Putting a little funding towards keeping these parks in good shape so our kids can use them is really important, especially if they're at the age before they're really in the schools. And then the only last thing I want to say is just that it'd be really great if having in-person meetings, I know this has been something that's been talked about several times before, but it would just be really great to have both a Zoom option and an in-person meeting. I happen to speak better on the computer, but I feel the message gets relayed better face-to-face. Other than that, that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? I think we're running out of steam here. I'm looking around. Second call, last call for public session. Seeing none, we'll close the public session, move on to public official session, starting with the mayor. Mayor
Good
Cassetti.
evening. Good evening, President Stewart, members of the Board of Aldermen, and residents of the great city of Ansonia. I want to remind you of some upcoming activities. Saturday, March 15th at City Hall, we will celebrate and raise the Irish flag. Please join us at this event. Also, there will be a St. Patrick's Day Senior Center lunch at Munch Eatery on Monday, March 17th at 11:30 a.m. Please be advised that Christine Sonsini, our director of the Senior Center, has relocated almost all of the senior activities. Visit our Facebook page for the various new locations, and thanks to Munch and Holy Rosary for allowing us to use their space while we wait for repairs to be made as a result of a burst pipe. Thank you to Tim Holman, Mike Eman, and Public Works crew for their help. There will also be a spring egg extravaganza to support the Ansonia Animal Shelter, March 15th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Ansonia Police Department. And on April 12th, the Ansonia Nature Center will host an Earth Day event, so stay tuned for that. You may have noticed that Enviro Consultants has been grinding and placing sub-base materials to specified elevations at Olson Drive. 1 foot of clean processed gravel will serve as the base for the installation of turf. And further, clean processed gravel is being placed to serve as base for the installation of pavement for the parking areas. The site continues to be prepped and for the turf soccer field at Olson Drive. A non-mandatory walkthrough at Nolan Field was held today with several bidders reviewing plans and specs with their engineers in preparation for the bid opening on March 25th. Tim Holman, Public Works, and I met with crews from DOT for the prep work that they will be conducting prior to the new train station being built. We have a number of streets that will be milled and paved in the upcoming season, and we have been working with UI and Eversource to restore our streets to good condition. There has been a lot of disruption, and I am grateful to our residents for their patience in that regard. The weather is finally changing for the better, so get out and enjoy all the activities throughout the city. And whether you celebrate St. Patrick's Day by wearing green, enjoying time with loved ones, or simply reflecting on the importance of your family and friends, I wish you all a day full of happiness and good fortune. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thanks, Mayor. Next up, we'll move over to Corporation Counsel, John Marini.
Mr. President, members of the board, to start off with, I want to follow up in the fields. Obviously, the Nolan Field project in itself is a pretty big thing for us all. Very exciting. In terms of timelines, what to watch out for. 25th, the bids are due, right? The bids are out right now. As the mayor mentioned, we had the walkthrough. On the 25th, those bids are scheduled to be back in. At that point in time, our school building committee is going to be meeting to discuss those bids, to make a recommendation and finalize the design. The project will then come to the Board of Aldermen, the actual acceptance of the bid, of the recommended bid. So you could look forward to that happening fairly soon after the 25th. So first they'll come back in, staff will review, school building committee will meet, and of course, any of the aldermen are encouraged to participate in that meeting or potentially series of meetings, and then it'll go back to the Board of Aldermen. Timelines are very important here, as we want to make sure that the main field is done by August 15th in time for football. And likewise, we're having them hold the practice field, right? They're not going to start work on the practice field side until June 15th to make sure that there's an ability to have some activity going on at Nolan Field while both of these fields are underway, right? We want to be as least disruptive as possible to the schedules. So timing is going to be very critical. So you could expect to see meetings happening very quickly after the 25th. That's also why work is currently being done in the practice fields. On the baseball side, our work is going on right now to ensure our baseball teams, varsity, junior varsity, and middle school can continue to utilize Nolan Field for practice. They'll be playing games away, but practicing at home. And also work is going to commence pretty soon on the tennis courts, making sure that our girls tennis team could be utilizing Nolan Field even while this work is underway. Big thanks to everyone, including Athletics Director Brockett, all our coaches, and of course, parents, our Public Works, and everyone else for their understanding here, allowing this coordination to take place. That way we could achieve our main goal of having this all done for the fall. Any questions on that right now? As I know that's a hot topic, and you may be hearing a lot from parents, residents. All right, so keep an eye on the 25th, as that's going to be the bid date, the due date. Moving on from there, let me tell you on the legal side, Public Works contract is opening, so negotiations will start fairly soon. It's going to start with meetings on the city side to talk about
union contract.
have some muting. Hold on. So union contracts, that's going to be gearing up. City side will be discussing first before we go into our first rounds of negotiation. But keep that on your radar. Want to keep the senior center on your radar. You know already likely that there was a pipe burst in the senior center. It's a pipe that was located in between the senior center and the jail cells of the police station above it. The exact cause of the burst is not known. However, I can tell you that we are pursuing all damages to be covered through insurance, and we will, if necessary, be looking to hold the contractor responsible for any negligent defect in their work. Again, it's imperative one way or the other that this is covered through our insurance, and of course that we get it back together as quick as possible for our seniors. We're giving a conservative timeline of 6 weeks out. Certainly could be sooner than that, but that conservative timeline has allowed Christine to book alternatives for our seniors, both at our own facilities like the Armory, and also reaching out to some of our community like Assumption Church and Holy Rosary. Big thanks to all of the community pulling together, making sure that our services are not disrupted while we're waiting for the physical senior center to be fixed. Of course, we want to keep on, bingo. We want bingo day to keep on going strong. We don't want to drop the ball there. So you can look forward to that, that accommodated schedule to be out there as we move along to finalize the repairs. Want to point out, right, on the state level, I want to talk about a couple things. One, I want to address education really quick, though. Some comments were made before about the quality of education. And of course, I think the quality of education really begins with our teachers and staff. And of course, our city is very proud of our teachers at the ground level and our administrators working very hard to meet some very severe challenges, right? In terms of providing the best education possible for our area, and have made some very significant strides. In terms of what can be done to help, big thank you always to our taxpayers who have been there to help. As you know, the city passes on costs for education proudly, right, through the budget to its taxpayers every year. We've talked about things like the minimum budget requirement, right, in the past, but it bears saying again and again. When you set a new budget for education every year, right, you give an increase, that increase becomes the new watermark, the new floor on what funding is. So the next year you start at that floor and only go up, right? And that's something we have done year after year after year. Of course, the city is very proud to have been fully funding education, especially over the last half a decade or more, right? And of course, money alone doesn't improve education, but it certainly helps, certainly provides resources. So, what help could be offered from the state? Again, we can't talk about it enough. It used to be that something called the Education Cost Sharing Grant would give money every year to the city. The city could then take that money and pass it over to the Board of Ed. It became a part of the Board of Ed's operational budget. The Board of Ed could use it for anything, including paying teachers, buying any sort of resources. And it became part of the watermark, right? So because the city gets additional money, it could pass on additional money. Well, we haven't got any additional money from the state since 2008. Our ECS to the city has been frozen since then. So the additional money every year for the last decade that our residents have been stepping up to fund has not been supported by additional state money. Instead, they send the money directly to the Board of Ed. And while that seems like a good thing, it's not in the same way. It's not for operational expenditures. It doesn't increase the watermark. It could be money that's given one year and then taken away the next year. And not only that, our school actually has to make an application to use it. So when we got the money, or when we give the money, it goes to them, and they use it as they deem necessary to educate our kids. When the state gives it, strings. You have to write an application, like a grant, like you or Sheila writing a grant to try to use the money, and it's not supposed to be used on operational costs. So what's going on? Why can't the state step up and do its right and fund our city school system? Give the funding to the city so we could pass it on directly to the Board of Ed, so we could actually fund our Board of Ed at an even higher level, do better for our kids. We don't know the answer to that. There's been lawsuits made against the state for not following its own rules, the state failing to even fund the ECS it has going appropriately. They need to get their stuff together. Hopefully in this session, they can all see eye to eye fully fund ECS, and change the way it works so the money can be given directly to the school's operational costs, the way it should be done. Beyond that, state is considering, I guess, a new piece of legislation that would require a referendum in the event a city sells its assets. And, legally, I think it's an interesting proposal. Certainly referendums, something that we've been interested here in Ansonia. Back 13 years ago, as I mentioned at the beginning of, actually at the beginning of this meeting, right? I mentioned that 13 years ago, the Board of Aldermen passed to the voters, and the voters approved a new rule that voters would vote on budgets when budgets exceed a certain threshold. And I was part of the Board of Aldermen that passed that piece of legislation. I think the state proposal on referendums for sale of assets is interesting. It's great to put the power in the people's hands, but I would just ask this. I would ask the aldermen tonight to consider making a recommendation to the state and our local legislator. If referendums could be applied to the sale of assets, why can't a referendum be made as a prerequisite to any project otherwise approved by the Siting Council? So we know the Siting Council is an agency, right, of the state that overrides local zoning. If a project is being done, say solar panels or a certain energy project that falls under the rules, the Siting Council could usurp all zoning power and do what it wants without local approval. Why not a law, right, that requires a local referendum before such a project is approved? And I would say that should be tacked on to that bill, and I would hope the Board of Aldermen could send that recommendation to our state legislators to put that requirement onto the bill, because the more power we put in the people's hands, the better. And having an unelected Siting Council overruling local zoning again and again all over the state of Connecticut, we've had the issue here in Ansonia. I think that's wrong. Finally, on a positive note, 501, a project that was incentivized by this board for apartments, a building that has been vacant and contaminated and blighted since the 80s, is finally going to see revitalization. This is part of the ATP Palmer project, right? So this is the neighboring building, the one with hundreds and hundreds of formerly smashed, now empty windows, right? All the windows are gutted. Soon you're going to see that transform into a mixed use apartments, and it's going to dovetail with some of the commercial that will eventually be done at ATP Palmer. So this is a huge step forward for the city. 501 is also known as the Process Lab, and of course that has been one of the biggest eyesores on Main Street, Ansonia, for decades and decades and decades. And we're looking forward to seeing that change this summer. So with that, any questions, any comments?
Questions for John? Joe Cassetti.
Yes, through you, Josh. John, how about a proposal for better pay for better teachers?
Of course, teachers deserve better pay.
Well, not all teachers. If a teacher is better in one class than another teacher, then that teacher should get an increase in pay.
So that's something that was discussed on the state level several years ago.
That should be a standard that should be met. Also, under the parks, I know there were some concerned parents that mentioned, and rightfully so, that they should step forward and, as they were doing, pick up if they find a piece of broken glass, if they find a battery, if there's an unkept area where a park is falling in disrepair. If they notify us and we can take care of it, fine. But I'd hate to see us have to start shutting down parks because we can't keep up with the demand.
Yeah, the city is going to be talking more, of course, to its public works. I know they're very attuned, and along with our recreation director, Jeff Capola, to the seasons that are beginning. And we want to be on top of that, right, for the programs. I will say this, if you're a parent, we certainly don't want to grab old batteries or shards of broken glass, but definitely, let the city know, feel free to give a call to the mayor's office and say, hey, what's going on? And we will take that as constructive criticism, because if it needs to be cleaned, it needs to be cleaned. And the mayor will be having a staff meeting to make sure that we're dotting all I's in terms of being ready for the season.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Other questions from the Alderman for Corporation Council tonight?
Tony just cleared his throat, that's all.
Sorry.
Mute yourself, Tony. All right, you're off the hook, John. Thank you. Next up, Director of Economic Development, Sheila O'Malley.
Yep, thank you, President Stewart, members of the Board of Aldermen. First, let me in advance apologize. I'm feeling a bit under the weather. Another reason to have Zoom meetings and not in-person meetings.
Absolutely.
And I want to just pick up where John left off, which is to say that despite an extremely challenging student body population and a distressed community, I think we have an outstanding superintendent in Joe DeBacco. I think the admin and the teachers do a remarkable job despite all of despite the stranglehold the state puts on us and the fact that they don't fund us fully. I think you are doing a phenomenal job, Joe, and I just want to say that. Not only that, you're a nationally recognized superintendent for the programs you've introduced and the things you've done for our students night and day compared to past superintendents. So, I'd rather talk about that than actually some of the projects, but I will go through a few of those. Let's see, the next project that's going to begin on Ansonia Copper and Brass is the bridge replacement, which is a major project. Still waiting for the state to say yes, go ahead. But we're all set to go. We have a design in place and we're ready to start the bridge replacement, which will be a huge upgrade to that property. In addition, I think I spoke last month about the demolition of Building 12. We met with, we've been meeting with Total Wrecking that's going to perform the demolition and should be getting out there soon. So that's actually going to be something you probably want to take a look at, or people can look at as they drive by, because it will be for the first time in I don't know, 100 years, where you can actually see you'll actually be able to see the railroad tracks. The mayor mentioned Olson Drive. They're out there grinding rocks and laying and crushing and the foundation for the turf field, and also for what will be the paving over of the parking lots. Trying to think of what else. Franklin Street DOT has said they are going to come back in and mill and pave the remainder of the street. We are getting them the dimensions and the length, and they will be out when hopefully this spring, summer, when the paving plants are open. I think for now, I think that's it.
Okay, any questions for Sheila tonight from the Alderman?
Yes, Josh, just if I can. Through you, Mr. President, Sheila, thank you for the update on Franklin. You know, I was going to ask that question anyway. And just out of curiosity, I see that they're doing a lot of work down there for the utilities at Nolan, and I see the boards across part of Wakely over there. Is somebody monitoring that just to make sure the road quality doesn't degrade with the large machinery being used?
Yes, and we've met with UI on several occasions. They have a schedule laid out and how they're going to restore everything, the road and etc. So yeah, we are on that because of course it also intersects with what we're doing with the fields, etc. So
absolutely,
yeah, we're on it, Joe. Good
and
point.
And with Franklin, you know, being milled and paved again, you know, you also don't want that portion of Wakely down there at the end.
Absolutely
degrading
not.
as well. So
yeah.
Okay. And in terms of the other utility work that's going on Church and throughout, you know, especially on Howard, and parts of the Fourth
Yes.
and the lower Fifth, is that the same thing going on? They're going to be milling and paving over any of the spots. I mean, I see they're doing patch jobs, and I get it temporarily until everything opens up. But I expect, especially on Church where they're just, in Howard, where they're just, decimating the road, they're gonna go.
Yeah, it's totally disruptive. And yes, we met with UI and we met with Eversource actually just recently. We have a list of roads that they are going to restore, that they've dug up and are going to restore back to its, well, better than its original condition. So the mayor knows more about that. And we can talk offline too, Joe, but yes, they will be restored. And again, like the mayor said, thank everyone for their patience, because it's very, it's frustrating when they open up the roads.
Absolutely. And I know it's not limited to the 4th and 5th, and it's going on around the city, but I just,
Everywhere.
that's where I see,
Yeah.
that's where I see it the most. So thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Other comments from the alderman? Joe Cassetti?
Yes, Sheila,
Yes,
under the weather,
little bit.
tissue in hand, a bottle
Little
of
bit.
water in the other.
Thank goodness for Zoom meetings,
Oh,
Joe.
my. Thank you for all you do, Sheila. God bless you, hon.
Thanks.
Anything else for economic development? All right, thank you. Next up, we have Police Chief Wayne Williams waiting patiently in the corner. Welcome.
Good evening, President Stewart, Board of Aldermen, Mayor Cassetti. As I usually start off, I'm going to go over some personnel matters with you. Currently have 5 officers that are in the academy. They're going to stagger in their releases from the academy between May and August. So we'll be putting them into field training. We have 2 officers currently in field training. We have 4 open positions here at the police department. 2 of those are sergeant's positions. We have a dispatcher opening that we're currently reviewing submissions. We've taken applications for police officer on a rolling basis. So if you know anybody who is interested, please send them our way. Lieutenant Barrera was recently promoted and sworn in. He's currently performing the admin sergeant duties and is also in charge of the evidence room. We're in the process of selecting a new admin sergeant who will replace Lieutenant Barrera. Once that happens, we just completed the testing for the rank of sergeant. We have a list, and I expect to submit one of those positions for filling immediately, and we'll fill the second one as manpower allows. We are also finishing the canine officer selection process. We hope to have that selection completed in the next several weeks. We're working with our vendor. They were here today on the purchase of a new canine and the training for the new officer. And the new canine vehicle has just arrived. So we're pretty far ahead in that process. As I had reported last month, we've been transitioning to a new sidearm for the officers. That transition is complete. We're prepping to return the old firearms for credit to the vendor. It appears that this transition came in at or below the requested budget amount. So that's good. As you know, most things when you buy them, they end up costing more. This one actually worked out for us. We're prepping for a high-profile trial that's coming up over the next month. I'm sure you've read it in the newspapers. I don't want to talk too much more about it, but it's going to take considerable manpower during testimony, evidence presentation, et cetera. So we are working with a bunch of our officers on that. I'm not quite sure what happened, but in the last couple of weeks, it's been little crazy. I'm sure you have seen some of the posts. We had the March 1st incident where there was a street robbery on East Main Street in front of the spot. We've arrested 2 suspects in connection with that case. We arrested a suspect on a warrant on an overdose case of a 24-year-old dating back to 2024. That suspect was already in custody at the Department of Corrections, where he was being held on a previous arrest for a similar case. We arrested a party after a long investigation to a child pornography case. We responded to a report of gunfire on Franklin Street. We executed a search warrant in a residence, recovering several firearms. 1 suspect, a convicted felon, was arrested in connection with that case. It has been an extremely busy month since our last Alderman meeting. Those are just 5 arrests out of a total of 75 separate arrests that have occurred over the last 30 days. So it has been extremely busy. So we are looking forward to the spring and hoping that is our busy month of the year. If you have any questions for me, I'm here to answer them.
Any questions for the chief from the board?
Just a comment, Josh, if I can. Chief, I just wanted to say, obviously, you know, we see some of the high profile stuff that makes the newspapers, and the incidents that have occurred and you just mentioned, but I just wanted to say thank you on a personal level, appreciation, for all the hard work that you and your officers do, responding so quickly and, you know, getting suspects, the arrest being made and things like that. So well done. Thank you, sir.
I thank you. I will pass that on. As I said, you know that we've been short manpower, so when we have big increases like that, it does tap into some of our resources, but we have neighboring towns that have helped us out. You may notice I know you were talking earlier about construction jobs, you may notice that you'll see some Seymour and Naugatuck officers helping us out with some of those construction jobs when we just don't have enough manpower to cover all of them. So we do have a lot of good connections with our departments, and we share resources on a regular basis, so that does help.
Great. Any other comments or questions for the chief? All right, thank you, as always. Next up, we'll go to Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Joseph DeBacco.
Good evening, President Stewart and members of the Board of Aldermen. Thank you for this opportunity to speak this evening. I have a couple updates to share. Later this month, March 25th, we'll have our CAPS Valley Award Banquet. The awards are based on students across the Valley who exemplify leadership, service to others, service to community, academic prowess, and their overall leadership. It's one of the most prestigious awards our students can get. It's a wonderful event where Board of Ed members and families come together across the Valley at Grassy Hill to celebrate our students. And I just wanted to share that. Hopefully I'll be able to share some photos after that so everyone could see our students that are being highlighted. I did want to let everyone know that our application for a new roof was accepted by the state, our non-priority application for Ansonia High School. There's other things that we have to go through, other steps of approvals, but at this point, the state has given us 77.86% reimbursement on our roofing project, which is great. As we've been talking about, and I've heard many people talk about, I'm happy to hear that $40 million was added back to our excess cost, for special ed. Just so you know, that's not enough. Halfway through this year, as I told the Board of Aldermen, we were cut $600,000 and they replaced about $480,000 of it. So we're still $120,000 short, and that's for this school year. The problem that I have is creating a wonderful budget based on, I don't know what's going to happen next year. And nobody does, because the legislature is still meeting. So I do apologize for not having a very large number. I mean, the spread or the swing could be very much based on how much they're going to fund. And I would like to be able to deliver the best budget I can to the city. It's hard when there's a lot of unknowns, and the unknowns aren't based on what we do here in Ansonia. The unknowns are based on what the state is willing to provide to us. So I did want to share that. Happy note. I do want to let you know we have a three-peat state champions, our cheerleaders. Once again, I think we need to push Coach Brockett aside and Coach Jen. She's been here 5 years. In 5 years, she's had 3 state championships. Don't worry, I've told Coach Brockett this himself. So, Coach Jen, 5 years, 3 state championships in Class S and now in Class M. Our girls are going to defend their New England championship, I believe, on the 22nd. So highlights to and kudos to them. The 18th is our football banquet at Aria, celebrating our football team. And I do want to highlight one last thing. We had in early acceptance day, UConn came to Ansonia High School. Out of 32 students who applied to UConn, 30 got in. 10 are going to the Storrs campus. The other ones are going to their satellite campuses. And I just want to let you know, UConn is not easy to get into anymore. Out of 30 out of 32, I think we should all be very proud of that accomplishment for our students. So I'm willing to answer any questions that the alders have, and I'm here to answer and here to help.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Joe from the Alderman or comments?
I just want to make a comment, Josh. Just Joe, since I'm taking the lead on compliments tonight, I want to say you're doing a phenomenal job there over in the
Here,
school.
here.
You're
Absolutely.
a terrific advocate for our school system. You're a terrific advocate at the state level and with other superintendents across the state. Keep up the good work, man.
I'll pass that on also to our
Great,
teachers and
Joe.
administrators. Can't do it without the incredible teachers and administrators that we have.
You have a wonderful team, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, and thank you as always for visiting us. See you next month. All right, so ends public official session, and we'll move on in the agenda here. Just gotta figure out where we're at. Financial reports. Start with the Finance Committee.
I'd like to make a motion to pay all bills if deemed correct.
Second.
Motion to pay all bills if deemed correct. Second by motion by Mamone, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? All right, motion carries unanimously. Second part, vote recommendations from the municipal report that's in the packet. Any questions or a motion to approve?
Make a motion or second.
Motion to approve by Rivers, second by Mamone. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries unanimously. And then lastly, in financial, the request for refunds in the amount of $4,863.59 if found to be correct.
Motion to accept as noted.
Motion by Mamone again, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Okay. Motion carries. Moving on, you notice that we have a lot more staff monthly reports in your packet. Hopefully you enjoyed those. I want to thank those departments, Nature Center, Senior Center, the Assessor's Office, Finance, Town Clerk's Office, the Library, Collections Administrator, the Fire Marshal, and the Land Use Department, all for submitting monthly reports and updates. Can we get a motion to place those on file?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion to accept and place on file by Mamone. Second was Yauman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And who's got the fire alarm beeping? Unrelated. All right. Motion carries. Let's see. Moving on to accidents and claims. We have two. 0225-1071 Mark Sokelski, reimbursement for vehicle damage, and 0325-1072 Benchmark Municipal Tax Services LTD versus Ansonia.
Motion to refer to council.
Second. Motion to refer to council by Yaman, second by Tar. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries unanimously. Let's see, we have no communications, no resignations, no resolutions. Ordinance, we obviously had the public hearing led by Joe Yaman and Corporation Counsel at the outset, right before the meeting on the proposed storefront vacancy ordinance prior to the meeting. Joe, do you have any updates on that? I don't think we're doing anything with it right now. Do you just want to take those comments in and?
Yeah, we're going to take the comments, and I think there's been some proposals that we discussed at the subcommittee level. John made the revisions, the two different versions. I think we're going to consider those revisions, go back at the subcommittee level before we present to the full board, possibly next month.
Okay. All right, so no action there, but then thank you for your work on that. All right. New business, we have 3 items. We'll go in order as the agenda. Item number 1 was mentioned in the public session. Fee for brush removal, discussion and possible action. Who put this on here?
Public Works.
Johnny, I'm looking, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking to see if there's anyone from Public Works here.
I thought Tim was on, Josh.
Yeah, I don't see him.
I don't see him, but I can call him if you want.
All right. Yeah, why don't you get, can
Yeah.
you call him and we'll move on. We can come back to it if he's available. Just want to understand what, you know.
Sure.
Number 2, certification of municipal option alternate motor vehicle depreciation schedule. John, do you want to handle this? John Marini?
So this is a requirement by the state. If if we're going to adopt basically essentially what's a depreciated schedule in terms of how we're recouping funds from our motor vehicle taxes, this allows us some options. It's recommended by our budget department, recommended by Kurt Miller, as it gives us some flexibility in terms of the revenue that we sacrifice as we move into what the state wants us to do for the value of motor vehicle taxes.
So John, can I gander a guess as to sort of summarize this? So because we're losing
Yeah, so yeah,
we're spreading it out basically over a period of
yeah.
years.
So we haven't. Well, this has been talked about a little bit with our budget sessions, but the state has promulgated rules for motor vehicles that are going to lead to a loss of revenue to the city of Ansonia. That loss of revenue is going to significantly affect the grand list, and is of course one of those challenges to the municipal budget. However, the state has realized that this is the case in many different municipalities. It's caused a lot of concern among municipalities about the damage it's doing to the grand list. Therefore, the state has offered this option, a municipal option, to essentially phase in the changes. So phasing in the changes is a positive thing for us. It means it's more gradual. The loss of revenue is not as abrupt and as damaging to the grand list. And so therefore it's being recommended.
Can I ask a question, Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, John, but I vaguely remember something being discussed in one of the committees at the legislature about this recently, within the last 3, maybe 4 weeks. Was there a fix legislatively that was coming about, or is this something? And I guess the second question, sort of as a segue to that, is this something that requires us to do it tonight as this phase in, or is this something we could punt for another month just to see how it plays out and gets JF'd? If something gets JF'd,
if there's a different option. So as far as we know, this is the legislative fix. However, it's not, of course, ruling out that there could be something else coming down the line. But right now, this is what they're offering, and there is a deadline on it. And Sheila, do you recall what the timeline is? I believe that Martin Heft wanted this back by a certain date.
Yeah, I believe
Right
it's
in front
this
of you
week.
tonight.
So we just wanted to be sure and get it back to him. It just means that we will probably avail ourselves of one of the options. So I don't want to take that off the table for the city since.
No,
you know,
definitely. Yeah, you want more flexibility, sure.
Yeah.
I just remember this was something that was brought up, I think, in the transportation subcommittee, and there was some discussion about this, a fix being promulgated legislatively. And certainly we want to avail ourselves and have the ability to, take the best option for the city. But so I'm not necessarily, I was just asking the question as to whether or not this was something that required immediate action or if something we can punt on, but it sounds like
Yeah, Joe,
we need to do it sooner.
there is a deadline on the, I don't know if it's in your packet or not, but there is a deadline on the form from Martin Heft, and I believe it was this week, which worked out well because of this meeting.
It's certainly not something we have till next month to do, however.
Okay, so what, do you just need a motion then to?
Authorize the mayor to execute on behalf of the city.
Okay, is there, and is there, but there's options. We don't have to give him specific authority for a specific option or?
Yeah, he's saying you don't need to pick A or B, although we, in consultation with the assessor, we probably will choose B, but we don't have to choose anything tonight. Just have to sign a form that says we're
We
going
want
to-
the option.
Yeah, we want the
Okay.
option,
Well,
exactly.
in that regard, I mean, I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to have the authority to sign a certification for a municipal option. I would just only, with the caveat, I would ask that just a report back as to what the option is chosen after consultation, obviously, with Kurt.
I'll second that.
Good
I will
point,
second
Joe.
that.
Hey, Joe. So motion by Yaman, second by Mamone. Any further discussion on that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? All right,
Thank
motion-
you.
Sheila, number one, are we going back
Yes.
to it? Or?
What do we have? What's number one?
The brush.
Yeah, brush.
Yeah, I tried to reach Tim and he didn't pick up, so I don't know what happened. And I thought he was on. I thought I saw him on.
Would be sleeping.
That's a request from them to.
It is.
Okay.
It is, to try to recoup some of our,
All right.
some
we
of the
should
money
probably-
we.
We should probably push that then.
I'm gonna keep trying them, Josh, and when I get them, if I get them, I'll let you know.
All right.
Hey, Josh,
Yes.
I have a question. So based on the recommendation from Attorney Marini, how do we move forward with entertaining adding that, additional language, or making the request to our state rep to add that additional language around, the referendum idea for the siting council also?
I think you can propose it if you want, and we can send, I can send something off on behalf of us.
So do we need a motion, or is that something, because I'll make the motion to, put it in front of the board that, to request or ask the, our state rep that put forward, that bill to also include a referendum around, when the siting council makes, a decision and, the residents are not ultimately happy with it.
Josh, so that we can be clear on this, I wanted to clarify that also. This is urging that the state require a referendum when decisions of the siting council that affect local zoning. Is that accurate?
So
Yeah,
this
that's how I understood it when I was proposing it. The siting council obviously has the ability per statute to override local zoning on certain projects. And the proposal is simple, that the approval of any siting council project ultimately does need to go back to referendum to the municipality where it is.
So that's what I'm trying to clarify, John, because the one alternative is to say that when the decision of the siting council is at variance with local zoning, but then there are decisions of the siting council that may conform to local zoning. So what are we talking about here? Are we talking about any decision of the siting council that affects a municipality? Or are we talking about those that require a variance or are at variance with local zoning?
Yeah. So if they go to, if a project developer takes an application to the siting council, it's because it, statutorily needs to go to the siting council. If it needs to go to local zoning, they'll bring it to local zoning. You can't really pick and choose. You have to go to the appropriate forum.
Well, excuse me, but isn't that determined by size of the project?
It could be. It could very well be.
Okay.
That was the case certainly with the solar farm in Ansonia. There was a threshold of size. So it would be that if there is a project that needs to go that requires siting council approval, so be it. However, a referendum does need to be held ultimately on final approval for that project. If it fails the referendum, it fails final approval from the siting council, and the developer would be left with, I suppose, the ability to pull the project either back to the threshold where it would qualify for local zoning, or I guess in some instances, it wouldn't meet local zoning at all.
So again, just to clarify, this is any project of the siting council in a local municipality would need to be approved by the municipality, regardless of zoning of the location.
Yeah, so not to be complicated, we're not going to try to write the rules regarding siting councils. We're not proposing that they try that. It's just that if it's under the jurisdiction of the siting council, so be it. But final approval needs to be through referendum of the public of the municipality where the project is being implemented.
Okay, so that's the proposed, that's what you're
That's
proposing,
what I would
would
propose.
like to see proposed.
Actually, like totally broke with two things at the time, and they came to me
Correct.
with this, and I was just like,
Got it.
Okay, so Tony, you're making the motion on that, correct?
Yeah, correct. For any corrected language I need, we could just reference John's explanation behind it.
All right, do we have a second for that?
Second.
Second by Levinsky. Any further comments or discussion? All right, all in favor of that?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Our motion carries unanimously. All right, we'll move on to
So
number-
what does that mean? Does this entail a letter?
yeah, it'll be a letter from our board that we the Board of Aldermen voted unanimously to recommend the following addendum to this legislation that's being proposed, which hasn't passed, but it's being proposed
And that letter goes to whom?
to our local legislators.
So our state senator and state representative. Okay.
Which is where it's
How
originated.
about we recommend that it gets withdrawn? 'Cause the whole thing is kind of ridiculous.
I'd second that.
Thanks, Bobby. How about maybe just that?
Too late.
Okay.
All right, we're moving on to it could be mentioned that the comments that have been made, obviously, in that messaging.
No, I don't mean that our proposal gets
No, not our
withdrawn.
proposal, right.
That
No,
that the
theirs.
legislation that is being proposed gets rescinded or retracted. That's
Yeah,
that's my proposal.
Sheila, I think we're all aware that it's retaliatory in nature, and it's going to have almost no impact on Ansonia moving forward. But this whole
Okay.
siting council thing definitely has an impact and could potentially impact additional parcels of land where, again,
Yeah.
the city has no recourse behind it when the siting council has the absolute power to approve it.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
so many municipalities, unfortunately, have been at the mercy of the siting council, and they've had projects foisted on them that create no taxable revenue for the city or town, that pose dangers to the residents, whether they be giant windmills or potentially dangerous technology. And it seems very wrong-headed that the state would usurp power over residents of a municipality. I think it's interesting, the idea of putting more power in the people's hands is I think the right way to go. And even the idea of a referendum on a sale of assets is, I think, a strong way to go in terms of allowing people to have a say in their local government, but at the same time allowing the state to foist its will on municipalities. That's wrong. It doesn't seem to be in thinking with the actual bill that's proposed. So this is certainly an opportunity for the legislators to get it right and to stop dictating the state's will onto our towns and cities.
John, if I may, the people have a voice every November when they when the polls are open. So they make their voice be heard in the
Exactly.
form of a vote.
Good point.
And I'll
Exactly.
if I can just make a brief comment, John, while I agree with you in terms of, the public having input and possibly putting more hands back into the power of the people, it's also the cost of it. So anytime one of these things, so that the bill as currently proposed, puts out there that basically the municipality has to incur the cost of a referendum election within a certain time frame, imposing that cost on the local municipality that wants to sell an asset, as opposed to if the state is going to again impose its unfunded mandates, maybe the state should be subsidizing that election. It's just another cost being handed down from Hartford onto municipalities. So that's another concern.
Yep. Great point,
Makes
Joe.
sense.
So at the expense of belaboring this discussion, I think that, our charter is very clear. That is the responsibility of the Board of Aldermen to deal with sale and purchase assets.
Right. Correct.
Whenever you have a situation where the state is passing a law that would apply to municipalities, I think the general principle of law is that's applicable to those municipalities that do not have charters, right? And this is
Right.
you see this in several instances in state law, where if you don't have a charter, you follow the state law. If you have a charter, you follow your charter.
There's, in many instances, the state statute would actually override a charter, right? So the general assumption is that if the statute is passed, if a state law is passed, that does trump local law. There are situations where certain towns have not adopted charters. In that specific instance, they are governed by legislation, the legislation that created.
That's my point.
And if those towns were to adopt charters, they would then be able to kind of do away with that. But generally, right, if a town has a charter, or if it didn't have a charter, if the legislators make a statute that applies to all municipalities, that will control over any inconsistent items in a charter or in a local code.
Well, school referendum is a good example of that, because you have those municipalities in the state that don't have charters, their budget goes to referendum per state law.
Yep.
Those that do, you follow the charter. I think the issue here really that I would rather see us opposed to is the encroachment of further state law on local decision making through the charter.
Right. 100%, Steve.
Now, I'm not quite sure how you express that, but I think that's a clearer path to this and a clearer message than.
Yeah, I'm gonna propose that I draft up something that encapsulates this in the motion and our sentiments, and I'll distribute that before it goes anywhere, if that's agreeable to everybody.
Like it.
Okay.
That's fine.
Joe, you look like a floating head there in the dark. All right. Moving on. Number 3 under new business is regarding the animal shelter design, build services, bid award. And Sheila, you want to take this up?
Yes, sure. So I'm recommending that we award the bid to CAFA Group LLC. Their bid came in at 1.313. The other bids were Enterprise Builders at 2,255,039 and Diversity Construction Group at 1,606,000. There was one bid that we received from O'Riordan McGanny Architects LLC, and that was at 1.1, but there were no alternates included in their bid, so they didn't pick up the addendums for the alternates, and they didn't add them onto their bid. So in fact, they withdrew. So that leaves CAFA Group at 1.3 million, $1,303,573.96. And my recommendation is to go with CAFA. CAFA has done a lot of projects. They've done animal shelters. They're more known for school buildings. They do a lot of school building projects, but they do have experience with the animal shelters, and they're out of Bridgeport.
What was
So,
the time frame? I'm
so
sorry.
we meet with, we actually all meet, Jeannie, everyone, the architects, the engineers, and CAFA meet tomorrow to discuss scheduling and to address how we're gonna stage this. So I anticipate that they'll get a notice to proceed if you guys are okay with them within this week, and they could begin as soon as the end of March.
Sheila, can I ask you a question? So has Jeannie
Yes.
reviewed the plan, and is she okay with, this company performing the work?
Yep, Jeannie, we've looped her in from the very beginning. And she likes the plans, she likes their I'm sorry, she likes the proposal, so hopefully she'll have no objections tomorrow. She is going to attend the meeting and talk about scheduling with us.
So pending that meeting tomorrow, can I make a motion to accept
Sure.
the bid for the Bridgeport company? Unfortunately, I missed their name. To
Yeah.
accept that bid,
CAFA.
thank you, with one contingent, that when you guys discuss the schedule tomorrow, to have the schedule distributed to the full board.
You got it.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mamone, second by Janetti, to award the bid to Kafa Group LLC and to also distribute the schedule, once approved, to the aldermen. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right,
Thank you.
You're
The
welcome.
dog's approved too.
Dogs approved.
Okay,
Some cats.
thanks.
Heathcliff is in favor of this.
Okay.
All right, under old business, we have one item, State of Connecticut Department of Transportation, 500 East Main Street easement for solar carports. Sheila, I'm going back to you on this one, I believe.
Yes, thank you. This was on last month, and unfortunately Fred wasn't here to talk about it, but I did speak with Fred, and I've spoken to the engineers for the carports, and we need this easement in order for UI to do work in the city's right of way, and the DOT. And they're paying us $500 for the easement, which seems like a little amount, but it's extremely important to grant the easement.
And this was for the hookup for the solar carports? Is that what that was?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's on 500 East Main Street, which is the parking lot.
Okay, I'll make a motion to grant that easement.
Second.
Motion by Mamone, second by Adamowski.
Can I just ask one question really
Yep.
quick? Sheila, if you know, is this going to be, is everything going to be running underground?
Yes, Joe.
Okay, and I assume, I'm trying to recall the discussion about this last month, but after the solar carports are put in, this easement is granted. Part of the project is obviously fixing whatever is dug up for the underground portion of this.
Yes, they are gonna fix that. That's that was the installer, the carport installers that dug that like trench. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes,
That's in the
yes,
middle?
exactly.
Yeah, that's for the wiring, so.
That's what I figured.
They
but-
will replace that.
Okay, wonderful. All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? All
Who's
right.
beeping?
Oh, you just heard it just now? Is that? It's been going on for 2 hours.
I know, but it's getting annoying. It's been annoying. Now it's really getting
Now it's
annoying.
annoying. Okay.
Now it's annoying.
You gotta mute all of us and bring us all back in one at a time. We'll find out. We'll get to the bottom of this, Bobby.
All right, so that ends the regular business.
Do we need a motion to table the brush fee discussion till next month? Since Tim is
Oh,
not
we
here.
couldn't get Tim. That's right.
So,
take
I'm-
that. I guess
yeah, I'll make a motion to table till next month.
Second.
motion to table new business number 1, fee for brush removal by Yaman, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We will pick that up next month, hopefully. And that ends the regular session. We have 3 items under executive session. Potential lease of parking spaces in city lot, which was mentioned in the public session, negotiation of the regarding the waste disposal contract, and 50 Woodbridge Ave appeal.
Recording.
Motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
Motion to come out of executive session by Rivers, seconded by Not. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we had 3 items in executive session. I'll go through them in order. Number 1, potential lease of parking spaces in city lot on East Main Street.
Motion to take no action.
Second.
Motion to take no action by Yaman, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? All right, motion carries. Number 2, negotiation waste disposal contract.
Motion to proceed as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion by Yaman. Who was the seconder on that? I think it was Mamone.
Me.
Yeah.
Lamone.
Seconder Mamone to proceed as discussed in executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carries unanimously. And the final one, number 3, 50 Woodbridge Ave appeal.
Motion to take,
Yeah, take no action.
second.
Motion to take no action by Rivers, second by Yaman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion carries unanimously again.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
To adjourn by Rivers, second by Tar. Thank you, everybody.
Good
Thank you.
buddy.
Good night.